The first time the prairie whispered her name, she thought it was the wind. It was dusk, the sky bled amber and violet, across an endless sea of tall grass. Eleanor Whitmore stood alone beside the wooden fence she had repaired with her own hands, boots half buried in dust that remembered more footsteps than it should have. Eleanor. The voice wasn't loud. It wasn't close, but it was hers. And it knew her. She did not turn around, because there was no one there. There never was. And yet, something in the prairie had begun to speak. Eleanor Whitmore had not come to the prairie by accident. She came because there was nowhere else left to stand. 3 years earlier, she had buried her husband beneath a crooked oak tree in Missouri. A fever took him in 5 days. By the 6th, she had sold the house, the livestock, the silverware, and everything that held the shape of his hands. Grief, she learned, is heavier than furniture. So she headed west, not because she believed in fresh starts, but because she needed distance from the silence that remembered too much. The land she claimed was wide and merciless. It stretched beyond the horizon in every direction. Waves of tall grass that moved like breath beneath the sky. There were no neighbors close enough to hear her cry. No church bells. No familiar faces. Just wind. And space. And time. The prairie tested her from the beginning. It split her palms with rope burns and carved lines into her skin with sun and frost. It stole her sleep with coyotes howling, somewhere beyond sight. It snapped her patience when fences collapsed and crops withered. But it did not break her, because Eleanor Whitmore had already survived something worse than loneliness. She had survived love lost, and there is nothing the wilderness can threaten a woman with, once she has buried the man she thought she would grow old beside. Still, the prairie watched. At first, it was small things. Her lantern would flicker, even when there was no wind. Footprints sometimes appeared along the creek. Single sets, narrow and deliberate. But they always ended abruptly, as if whoever walked there had stepped into the air and vanished. She blamed exhaustion. Grief can bend perception. Isolation can sharpen it. Some nights, she would wake with the strange certainty that someone had been standing beside her bed. Not threatening, not breathing heavily. Just present. As if waiting. "Show yourself," she whispered once into the darkness. The prairie answered with silence. But it was not empty. She could feel that much. Winter arrived early that year. The grass turned brittle and pale. The sky lowered itself, heavy and metallic. Frost crept along her windows like quiet fingers, and the whisper returned. Clearer, this time. "Eleanor," she froze at the sound of it, hands submerged in a basin of cold water. It did not come from outside. It came from everywhere, from the boards beneath her boots, from the rafters above her head, from the air inside her lungs. The voice did not demand. It did not threaten. It simply called her name as if it had known it long before she ever stepped onto that land. Her heart pounded, not in fear, in recognition. That frightened her more, because somewhere deep inside, beneath layers of grief and pride and stubborn survival, she felt as if she had been expected, as if the prairie had been waiting. Eleanor began to walk the land at night. Not because she was brave, but because she refused to be hunted by something unseen. If there was a presence, she would meet it standing, boots crunching over frozen grass, lantern swinging at her side. She followed the creek's silver line beneath the moon. The stars were merciless in their clarity, endless, cold, watching. "Why do you call me?" she asked once. Voice steady despite the tremor in her chest. The wind moved through the grass, and for a moment, just a breath of a moment, the sound shifted. It shaped itself. It bent into something almost human. Home. The word was barely more than a suggestion, but it struck her harder than any storm. Home, she had left hers behind in a shallow grave. Hadn't she? Or had home followed her? The next morning, she found something at the edge of the creek. A small silver locket, tarnished, half buried. Her breath stopped when she recognized the pattern engraved along its edge. It was identical to the one she had buried with her husband, identical down to the tiny crack near the hinge. Her hands shook as she opened it. Empty, no picture. No inscription, just space where something should have been. Impossible, she whispered, but the prairie did not argue. It never argued. It simply waited. Memories began to surface. Not gently, but like bones rising from shallow soil. Her husband, Thomas, had once told her a story about the land. He had grown up near plains like these. His grandmother believed the earth remembered names, not the names people give each other. He had said once, smiling faintly, "The ones carved into us before we're born." Eleanor had laughed. Then, she did not laugh. No, because the prairie was not whispering Mrs. Whitmore, it was whispering Eleanor. The name she had carried as a girl, the name spoken by her mother before she was lowered into the ground, the name her husband had used only when he wanted her full attention. Something in this land was not just calling her, it knew her before she became someone's wife, before she became someone's widow, before grief defined her shape, and that realization split something open inside her. What if she had not come west to escape memory? What if she had come because something here remembered her differently? The turning point came on a night without a moon. The sky was inked. The prairie? A breathing shadow. Eleanor woke with the unmistakable feeling that she was no longer alone in her house. Not outside. Inside, the air felt charged, thick, and electric, against her skin. She rose slowly, bare feet against wooden floorboards. The lantern did not need lighting. A faint glow pulsed through the walls themselves, like veins beneath skin. Eleanor. This time the voice was undeniable. Not wind, not imagination. It was layered, as if carried by 1,000 hushed echoes beneath the soil. She stepped outside. The grass did not sway. The world was holding its breath. Then, she saw it. A narrow path, cutting through the prairie, where none had been before. The grass bowed on either side as if pressed down by invisible hands. It led toward the far ridge. The one she rarely approached, because something about it felt sacred. Or forbidden. She followed. Every step felt like crossing a threshold. Halfway up the ridge, the air grew warmer. The ground beneath her boots hummed faintly, like distant thunder trapped underground. And then she understood. Not with her mind, with her bones. The prairie was not haunting her. It was recognizing her. The ridge had once been a burial ground. Long before settlers carved fences into it, the land had been disturbed, broken, claimed, and Eleanor Whitmore had unknowingly built her life atop something ancient and restless. But the presence did not want revenge. It wanted witness. At the crest of the ridge, she dropped to her knees. The grass encircled her in a wide arc, forming a perfect ring. The wind returned. Sudden, fierce, spiraling around her like a living thing. And within that wind, she heard not one voice, but many, soft, layered, ancient. Not calling her to die, calling her to remember. Tears streamed down her face, but she did not wipe them away. "I am still here," she whispered. The wind roared louder, stronger, as if answering, and in that moment, Eleanor understood the truth that shattered her fear. The prairie had not chosen her because she was weak. It had chosen her because she endured, because she knew loss, because she understood what it meant to carry ghosts without collapsing beneath them. She pressed her palm flat against the earth. "I will not leave," she said. "I will not let you be forgotten." The wind soughed instantly, the glow beneath the ground faded. The voices quieted, but the presence did not disappear. It settled. Like something finally acknowledged, morning came, gently, golden, still. The ridge looked ordinary again. New circle. No path, no glow. Only endless grass, beneath a rising sun. Eleanor stood at the top of the hill and breathed deeply. For the first time since Thomas died, the silence did not feel empty. It felt shared. She walked back to her house, slowly. The locket lay on her kitchen table, untarnished. Yet, when she opened it, there was something inside. Not a photograph, not an engraving, just a single word scratched faintly into the metal. "Airy," she smiled. Small, steady, unafraid. Some women are broken by the wilderness. Some are erased by grief. But Eleanor Whitmore was claimed by neither. She was claimed by something older, something that knew her name before she ever spoke it. And as the wind moved gently across the prairie that evening, it no longer sounded like a whisper. It sounded like a promise. Because sometimes, the land does not call you to escape your past. Sometimes, it calls you to stand in it and be remembered. If this story asks anything of you, it is only to think of a moment you chose to remain uncharted, stubborn, and quietly deliberate. There is dignity in that decision. There is companionship in the work that follows it. Share a memory like that below, if you will. A brief line about the time you chose to stay and what it taught you. The Prairie keeps a record, without asking for applause. Perhaps we can do the same for each other.